You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast. How do we treat aliens, whether they look like us or not? How human is Spock really? And what does love do to Superman? We were going to talk about Star Trek Strange New World Season 2 and the exciting crossover with Lower Decks. Then we're going to discuss My Adventures with Superman and Clark's love life. Finally, we'll be discussing Marvel's Secret Invasion and the implications that show has for the rest of the MCU. I am really excited. This is Systematic Geekology. We are the Priest of the Geeks. I am Joshua Noel, here with your fellow geekologist, one of the founding host of the show, one and only Will Rose. How's it going, Pastor Will? And we have a special guest for this episode who appears to be figuring out his audio setup at the moment. But Will, you do a show with our guest, his other show, Across the Bifrost. You help him with that, talking about Thor and other Marvel comics. He's been on our Patreon before. I don't know if he's been on the regular feed before, but I'm excited to announce good pod friend of mine. You know, we met at a theology beer camp last year. We're going to go again. We have a special code for y'all at the end. If you stay tuned, you can get a discount. But Ryan, I don't know if you can hear us, but how's it going?
He can hear us.
Okay. All right. He can hear us. We cannot hear him yet, but I'm sure he will figure it out, and we'll hear from him soon. In the meantime, if you are watching this live on Facebook or YouTube or anything like that, make sure, give us a shout out where you're at, where you're listening from, where you're coming from. And in a minute, we're going to be talking about what we've been geeking out of. We're going to do a lightning round. So if you have anything you want us to shout out that y'all have been watching, let us know. Let us know. We're excited for that. We can hear Ryan now, so I'm excited to start our lightning round off. Yeah,
there he is.
I heard you breathe earlier.
There's my buddy.
So,
there he is.
Man,
I'm ready. I'm ready for this.
Hearing me breathing, guys, you got me already excited for Theology Beer.
Well, guess what?
Yeah.
It is time. Yeah. It's fine. Oh, there we go. Our lightning round. Ryan, do you have a quick one outside of our main three subjects today that you want to shout out that's new to you or new to the fandoms at large?
Okay. So there's three things I'm super excited about. I'm going to hit you with them real fast.
Okay. Go ahead.
This comic book. What's the rules here, Joshua?
There are rules. This is anarchy.
Oh, fan-freaking-tastic. I'll try to keep it.
A man who created an outline 3 pages long says there's no rules. Okay.
Listen, I create the outline so I have something to throw out.
Yeah.
What's the point of breaking rules when there aren't rules to break?
Exactly.
Everyone, you should go check out this amazingly awesome comic I just read the other day. It's called All Against All. It's a fantastically gritty and crazy comic about like Tarzan meets like sci-fi alien invasion. It is
like actually Tarzan.
Their character in this is clearly a Tarzan character. It's written by Alex Packnadel, and the art is Caspar Wingard, who's like my new obsession in comic art. You should go read this. It's incredible. The first volume just came out, and I'm excited to go see the movie called The Last Voyage of the Demeter this weekend. Dracula at sea. That's all I needed to hear.
Yes.
Dracula haunting an entire crew of like British merchants. I am so freaking here for it. It's going to be amazing. And then hopefully I get to see the Meg 2, The Trench, right after that.
Ooh, yeah.
So like kind of offshoots of normal mainstream geek culture. But I'm like, if you give me a monster slowly picking off a crew of people, I'm totally here for it. So that's my, did I do the lightning round correctly?
There is no correct, but I gotta say,
right. Sorry, we wrote the rules to throw out the rules. I forgot.
Yeah. Listen, according to my wife's rules, it's August, so it's Halloween now. So Dracula and monsters are, they're fair game.
Let the pumpkin spice run. Let the pumpkin spice just flow. It's not even September yet.
Oh man, I have four for the lightning round. I'm gonna start with 2, and then let Will go, and then I'll do my other 2, and let Will finish.
Okay.
So. First, I gotta say, I watched Barbie. I loved it.
I haven't seen it. Don't spoil
it. He's gonna plug his ears. All of the woke criticism, I think, is silly. It's not as woke as people want to act like it is. It's very much, female power in the beginning, patriarchy in the middle, and then, hey, wait a minute, what if toxic masculinity and toxic femininity is wrong? And what if everybody matters? What if that's a thing? And there's such thing as equity and equality, and they're both important. It's good stuff to even pick at that
Which is kind of what woke is talking about. So it's not necessarily a dirty word when you say woke. It's kind of what woke
I think the criticism that I liked the most was if everything is only one way, there's still somebody gets left out. And I like also the criticism of a lot of, your woke agenda is just a bunch of white males sitting. It's ironic with my current companionships, just white males sitting around.
I'll leave, Josh. It's fine.
What is female? Like, oh, we're going to decide what female power looks like. That's not quite. Anyway, my second one, Atomic Eve. Atomic Eve dropped on Amazon. In between Invincible season 1 and season 2, we get a little movie, some filler in. Oh, it's so good. You got a lot of like anti-conspiracy stuff, some government overreach commentary. I love it. Ryan has something to say.
Joshua, I just want you to know that was my third thing. I was on my list, and I was like, if I gotta cut one, I'm gonna roll the dice on the fact that Joshua or Will might bring this up. That Adam Eve special was freaking incredible, and I cannot wait for Invincible season 2. It's gonna be off the chain good. The cast is stupid talented. Like, they're adding so many great voices to this next season.
Oh yeah, and they're staying true enough to the comics too that I'm like, they changed the order and stuff, but I'm like, I have confidence in this team, and I know what happens in the comics, and I'm like, I want to see that on TV. It's going to be good.
Yeah. Is Atomic Eve, is that just like a one-shot special, or is it like a series of a couple of episodes?
It's just like a movie, basically.
It's like a 45-minute kind of like it's like a one-shot origin story for her.
Of Amazon. Amazon.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
Go watch it right about now, Will. Go watch it.
All right, Will. What's your first few picks for the lightning round?
Really, I just have like two things I want to talk about.
Do one, and we'll do the other after mine.
No, I'm gonna combine them together because they're inseparable. They're entangled together. But yeah, so I'm a huge X-Men fan. That was my first love in comics and superhero-y stuff. And Joshua and I have bonded before about our love of Miss Marvel, and so same with Ryan and us. That in terms of her being a new character for Marvel and emerging on the scene and what she represented and what she did, and then her place in the comic books, and then now her place in the MCU and the TV show, which I love so much. Well, she's now entangled with the X-Men in the comics, which I think is foreshadowing what's going to happen in the MCU with her in the MCU. So X-Men, a few years back, Jonathan Hickman rebooted the entire X-Men franchise with Powers of X, House of X, this kind of big crossover, redefining who the X-Men were and their place in the Marvel comic universe, and having their own kind of nation state and what they meant for the world. And they had their own place. They became pretty powerful. For me, I loved what he did with that. It was super sci-fi, and nobody had ever kind of treated the X-Men like that before, and their characters and what they could or couldn't do. And it was just a great, awesome, and deep, fresh take on the X-Men. Well, as the years go on and other people take over that franchise, for me, it kind of ran a little stale. Once stories keep going and go, they can't be like your favorite thing all the time. So even though that's the book that's going to be on my pull list, at least one X book, there's so many X-Men books, just put an adjective in front of it and they probably do it. Immortal X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, Astonishing X-Men, whatever. They're going to keep running with it. Well, it kind of ran a little stale, and I was kind of waiting to see, knowing they're going to reboot it. Well, they have a new kind of crossover reboot event coming up this fall called Fall of X. And so leading up to Fall of X, what they've done, this Hellfire Gala, every year they do this big celebration annual, like the Met Gala. They all get dressed up and party together and unveil something new for the human race. I'll try to keep this short, but in the latest Hellfire Gala, some major things happened that are going to shake up what's going to happen to the X-Men in this next event, the Fall of X, leading forward, and the teams. They killed off a ton of X-Men. They reduced it. But here's the thing. With Miss Marvel, her origins come around are within humans, which the reason they did that way back when is because the MCU didn't have rights to X-Men because of Sony and all kinds of things. So they made Miss Marvel's origin story and her getting her powers with the Inhumans. Well, we don't have Inhumans in the MCU, so we heard teased at the end of the TV show, perhaps she's a mutant, and people are like freaking out. Maybe this is the emergence of the X-Men or mutants in the MCU. Well, what are they going to do with her in comics? Well, controversially, they killed Miss Marvel off a couple months back or a month back in Amazing Spider-Man number 26, and kind of controversial. People were like, "Oh, why are they killing her off?" Because she's got a movie coming up. Well, we know that she's coming back. We didn't know she was going to come back this quick. In the Hellfire Gala, the X-Men resurrected her, revealing that she has an X gene in her system, which is why they are able to resurrect her and bring her back. So not only she is Inhuman, she's also a mutant, and so they're inviting her to be a part of the X-Men and on the mutant Team Mutants. And for me, I know there's a lot of cynicism around like killing off characters and bringing them back so quick. But for me, in a noisy world when everyone's trying to get people's attention any way they can, I understand why you would try to kill her off and then bring her back and have people pay attention to her. It's a noisy world. I get the game. I get the gimmick. For me, it's not that bad. Death and life help us reflect on all kinds of things, right? But they brought her back. She's now an X-Men, and she's going to have a book coming out here in August, Miss Marvel, the New Mutant, and it's written by the actor who's playing her in the MCU. She's co-writing it with someone. I don't know who the rest of the team is, and I forgot how you pronounce her name. Do you guys remember or know how to pronounce her name?
Oh, Iman Vellani is the actress you're referring to.
Yeah. And she's the one who's going to write this comic or co-write this comic, Miss Marvel, the New Mutant. And that's going to lead into hopefully what they do with this movie coming up and what her place is in the MCU and perhaps X-Men and others. So as you can tell, I've already talked way too long. I'm really excited about what they're doing with the X-Men. I'm excited what they're doing with Miss Marvel and combining the two together, loving those characters so much and having them be on the same team. I couldn't be more excited. I haven't been this excited about X-Men and like bringing a new team in a long time. So I hope that excitement's contagious to everybody.
I believe you were there when Professor Xavier brought the original 5 X-Men together.
Okay. An old joke.
Joshua,
time for an Xavier Ball joke. It's time for...
We were screwed the second Will said, I want to talk about X-Men. Because, how do I bring the Hickman run of X-Men concisely up to date? Oh, crap. We set our watches, everybody.
Well, you said lightning round. It was a hurricane.
Now that we are more than double the lightning round town, I'm going to do my big ones for the lightning round.
Okay, go for
it. First, I'm going to talk about what's going on with Moon Knight in Marvel Comics right now. There's some really cool stuff happening over there. So issue 25 kicked out a lot of stuff. It's like the beginning of the end. Legacy number 225. Will, you're welcome. That is Jed McKay and Alessandro Vitti, I believe. He's fighting Black Scepter in this. You get some of the mind control, psychological thriller kind of stuff going on. Great double or oversized issue, I guess. And part of that also, the excitement around Moon Knight, kicked off the City of the Dead. It's a 4-part miniseries written by David Papose. I'm trying to read this off. And Marcelo Ferreira is, I guess, the penciler on that. I'm not really sure. Yeah. But Moon Knight is saving a child from the underworld. So he's going down, and it's not Mephisto. It is like Egyptian underworld. It's cool. It's pretty sick. I'm still getting used to, they're trying to make it like the MCU Moon Knight. So, it's a lot less edgy than I'm used to Moon Knight being, but it's good storytelling. So I'm just learning to adapt and appreciating the story for what it is. And that brings me to I really wanted this to be the main topic. If I didn't care so much about our listeners, I would have done this instead of Star Trek. Good Omens season 2. In my personal opinion, Neil Gaiman at his absolute best is Good Omens. So for those who don't know, Neil Gaiman, he writes a lot of different comics and stuff. The Sandman, that was really popular. That's, Neil Gaiman. He wrote the Good Omens book, or the novel, I guess, with Terry Pratchett. They wrote a sequel to that book that never got published because Terry passed away. However, Neil did take that book and write season 2. That we never thought we were going to get a season 2 of the show because the second book was never published. Not only did we get it, but they set it up for future seasons. It's phenomenal. The show has like a Harry Potter series of misfortunate events, kind of like quirky vibe, but also that like humor and philosophy of something like The Good Place to it. It is so cool, so good. We discover in this season that my favorite demon, Crowley, my favorite, of course, because he's David Tennant, you know, can't go wrong.
Hard to beat David Tennant.
He was the one who spoke the word in the beginning, read out the scroll, and let there be stars, let there be light, and the universe began. He was also there when the story of Job, and you have a lot of like anti-duality kind of themes, which of course I have to mention so that I can plug tomorrow. My other podcast, Dummy for Theology, you're going to be talking about duality. So, you know, maybe check out my other show. I do not talk about Good Omens, but I should have, because it is so freaking good. David Tennant at his best, Neil Gaiman at his best. You got a lot of romance fit in there, a lot of philosophy, great humor. I simply could not build up this series enough. Please go watch it. Please.
When I went on sabbatical a few years back in the before times, I did one of the books that was there on my list was Good Omens, and I read it and it was so good. And then the show came out, and I was just like, oh man, it was so good. So yeah, I got to geek out about X-Men and go on that, and then Joshua talks about David Tennant, so of course he's going to have his thing.
Yeah, but that does bring us to the end of the lightning round and into the actual episode now. Before we do any of the real main stuff, because I just knew we weren't going to have time in the lightning round. I planned on us going too long, Will. So I was just like, let's just throw it in there and actually just discuss what trailers have you guys seen recently that you're like, oh my God, this is too good. Because for me, there's a list. There's a list of new trailers that I was like, like Ahsoka, the final trailer finally dropped. Great. I'm the only one here who's going to mention the live action One Piece, but man, it was good.
No, I like that trailer too. I'm not a big, that's the thing about our podcast and our YouTube channel is that we have a wide range of hosts that geek out on different things. I'm not an anime person. I'm not a gamer, but when I hear about our hosts talk about and how much they love it, I was like, oh, I'll check that out. So I don't think I'm going to read the manga or probably not get into the anime of One Piece, but I will watch the live action on Netflix. And I can't wait to hear what One Piece fans think about it.
Yeah, me too.
And then I can get my take because I have no baggage attached to it. Like TJ may hate it because it's not like what they did or whatever. I don't see TJ hating really anything. But for me, just coming in fresh just to watch it on its own, I can't wait for it to share the story and see if I can get into it. I love that trailer. That was great.
Yeah. And I am nervous and excited and like just giddy. Like I love One Piece. I've loved it so much.
Is there anything? When does that drop?
Soon. I think it's like August 23rd, but I'm not 100% sure. Are there any trailers for you guys that you're like, oh man, that really gets you excited right now? Loki season 2, maybe?
I've used my lightning round to discuss the two trailers I'm most excited about.
Well, that's fine.
Honestly, I'll go back to the last voyage of the Demeter is like what I'm living for right now. And I know someone might be there like, oh, that cheesy Dracula movie. I was like, well, here's the thing. Liam Cunningham is one of my favorite characters from Game of Thrones. And he is the like narrator of that trailer. And like when he cuts into those first few bits of dialogue where he's like, we are a doomed crew aboard a doomed vessel in the middle of the sea and the devil is on board. I'm like, God, it's like melt me into pieces. That was so good. And so I'm like, I'm all here for that. And like anytime I hear Jason Statham's voice over a movie, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm going to go watch Jason Statham fight a shark because I have low standards and I'm a simpleton. So that kind of stuff friggin' gets in and it crawls around in my brain. I wish I could sit here and be like one of those fancy, fancy nerds. It's like I call movies like cinema. And I like get really like eloquent about like the craft of storytelling. I just want to see people fight sharks and vampires. That's all I want to do.
That's fair. That's fair. Although I assume you're also excited for Loki because
I am excited. I am excited for Loki. Truthfully, I love when Marvel drops Monday trailers because then they get to kind of like ride the wave for a few days. Right. And when that trailer dropped, I was just like, okay. I'm freaking here for this. Like I loved Loki season 1. I know it's kind of like baked into like my show that I should love that, but like, I don't know. Tom Hiddleston doesn't disappoint me. I've never watched a Tom Hiddleston project and been like, it was fine. I think that the directorial like direction they're going this season is going to be really consequential. So I'm ready. I'm ready for it. I'm very ready for Loki season 2.
Yeah, there's some things that I'm like, I just can't wait to hear them talk about it on Across the Bifrost, and that's one of them. I can't wait for that.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Oh man, yeah. So let's see other trailers. The Doctor Who trailers that have been coming out, guys. I'm getting full dose, like double dose of David Tennant this year. Like, what is happening? This is the best year. I'm finally getting to bounce back from COVID. Lower Decks is that surprise trailer that dropped when the surprise episode dropped and threw off all my scheduling, and I was like, I'm gonna get to start Lower Decks. When? What? That soon? Oh man, I am so excited. I Am Groot season 2.
Oh right, yeah,
man,
it's like September, right?
Yeah, it's like soon. I'm like, what? This fall is going to be phenomenal, and Florida State's looking pretty good. We might come out on top of a lot of stuff.
For the
love.
Oh,
listen.
Here,
I got to geek out on
button?
sports too. Will, you have any other trailers you want to mention before we?
I'll weigh in. I think Loki looks great. It'll go into our discussion with Secret Invasion, but like I'm really looking for the connective tissues in the MCU right now. And I know there's a lot of discussion around the movies and the different phases and the TV shows, and the CEO of Disney is chiming in about, slowing down or speeding up. I don't know, but I really want Loki season 2 to do some connective tissues with the multiverse, and I hope they do. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll still have fun with it. I like to keep it positive as well. And of course, Ahsoka. I think with the writer strike and the actor strike, I think we're going to have a gap in content, and so this fall is definitely full with a lot of content. There's no shortage of content for us to geek out on and share and discuss and talk about with our friends and communities. But I think. I'm just going to soak it up this fall, and then we'll see what the fall it is. I don't think geek stuff is going to stop, but it may slow down a little bit. So let's have fun this fall and see what happens and see where it goes.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, first major topic, 25 minutes in. I'm getting to Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Again, I said I was going to do Good Omens instead. The main reason I didn't is we had that huge crossover that happened. And I'm like, man, you guys are forcing me to talk about this instead of my love for David Tennant. I mean, I still fit it in here, but I was disappointed. So we are going to talk some about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I'm going to mention the crossover episode. I loved it. I loved it so much. We're also going to be discussing, so that crossover was episode 7. It's called Those Old Scientists, which was a play on words because TOS, the original series, kind of like Star Trek lingo. You also have episode 5 with Charade. Spock was a human for an episode, learned the smell of bacon.
Man.
Sorry, I don't know of the last time I laughed as hard at anything as episode 5, season 2, Strange New Worlds. I about died.
Can you explain real fast where Strange New Worlds falls in the timeline of Star Trek?
Yeah, I'm also going to discuss episode 9, Subspace Rhapsody. So Strange New World, it takes place before the original series, after the first 2 seasons of Discovery, but before the other season of Discovery when they jump into the future. So Star Trek timeline, you have the Enterprise, which is not that far off from us. Then you have, I think there's something else before Discovery. Then you have Discovery, then Strange New Worlds. After Strange New Worlds, right after Strange New Worlds is when the original series starts.
Gotcha. So that's why Spock is alive in Strange New Worlds. Gotcha.
Yeah. And well, he also comes back from the dead, so there's that. But the what I'm thinking of, I did a surprise crossover episode with Dummy for Theology and Systematic Ecology, and I talked about that other episode 8, which is why I'm not talking about it today. So it's a lot of PTSD and back with the Klingon Starfleet War. So if you guys are interested, go check that out.
Very well done. Joshua does a good job with pastoral care and talking about the options, and that, hey, if you're wrestling with those things, you're not abnormal, you're not weird. Everyone goes through it or has a version of it. So yeah, listen to the episode. He does a good job sharing some resources about all that stuff. So it's real and it's important.
Yeah, I got I got pretty vulnerable in that one, so it was nice. I heard, you and a few other people actually got with me. I was like, hey, thank you. That was really well done. And we appreciate how you talked about it. And that made me feel good. I do not diagnose myself with PTSD, but I have a lot of trauma experience. So it was interesting talking about that, not just from the geek side, but more deep, I guess. But for this one, I'm going to try and focus on the deep side. Episode 5, I'll start with it. Charades is what it's called. It's called Charades because Captain Pike convinces some Vulcans at one point because they're trying to stall for Spock to become Vulcan again so he can do the mind meld, which is part of their marriage ritual kind of stuff. And he's not able to do it because he's a human. I won't ruin why, because I just thought that was a funny little bit, and I'm going to leave it alone. But he's not able to do the mind meld, so they're trying to stall, and Captain Pike convinces these Vulcans that a part of human rituals, since Spock is both human and Vulcan, so he needs to do some both. A human ritual before you're allowed to marry apparently is to play charades. So Captain Pike convinces them that they're playing charades, but you get to see this whole thing of which. I've said in an earlier episode before too that this season's really focusing on identity, what makes you you. And they go through, different people's past, all that. So here we see Spock really wrestling with his human side and his identity. And it was funny because even early on in the episode, he talks about how like Vulcans, suppress their smell, they suppress their emotions and all this other stuff. And then as a human, he doesn't have those luxuries. So we're able to see him laugh and crack up with the team, and he learns kind of how to do jokes. We see him discover the smell of bacon because he's been suppressing his scent this whole time. He's like, what is that wonderful scent?
Wow.
Which I loved. I was dying. I think the time that made me laugh the most is the girl he's talking to. That's not the person he's getting ready to marry. One of the girls he's talking to is asking him about like how he's doing with being human. He's like, I'm just getting used to the emotions. It's really interesting. I don't cry every time I'm in the shower. And then he pauses before he says, that's a joke. I thought it was so funny. I don't cry every time.
Where Spock and I are different. But...
I was like, oh. So that one was just great episode without pointy ears. It threw me off, but it was great. It was so funny. And then we have the lower decks special crossover. So we start off with lower decks people. They discover this machine. It ends up being a time machine kind of thing, whatever. I'm not going to get into the details. This is one of my favorite shows of all time right now, especially Lower Decks. And we're about to start season 4, and I'm having withdrawals. It's been a little while since season 3. They give me this little taste. The animated people end up back into the live action show, and there they are. It's them as real people. And they show up, and there's Lower Decks, for context, is way in the future. It's past Picard. It's past all the next gen, the Discovery season 3 and 4. Like, it's way in the future. So for them, they are huge geeks. They constantly are talking about Spock and Kirk and how much they love those guys. And they make all the references that us geeks do, talking about how the Enterprise is really the only good model. And they have like their own little Lego builds and stuff. They're just geeks. So seeing them go back and they're like, that's actually Spock. So they're having like all the reactions that I would if I did get to meet Pike and Spock and all them. And it was some of the most fun just ever. Really just funny episode, but they don't drop that identity theme. They still bring it to what happens when you hear someone from the future jaw drop. You mean you're the Will Rose?
Yeah,
man, you're the one who led the church to being one again. You created church unity. It's like, what do you mean I did that? Like it's jaw drop moments for them, and they're like, no, I'm just a pilot. What do you mean? I'm not anything special. And they're like, no, you are the dude. And just really having that dude. Part of you are the dude. And just having that part of their identity challenge from how these geeks from the future view them. That was beautiful. And of course, they discover one of the characters brings a drink back from the future from one of the other whatever stuff and is teaching them how to make it and makes them all one. And like, oh, this kind of feels funny. So the end, it's like not right before the end credits, is the crew enjoying this beverage that they had in the future. And they become animated from this beverage. And they're all making like really just funny comments of, why are our eyes suddenly so big? And Spock's like, why can my arm do this? And it's
What
just
drink is
good,
it? Is
silly,
it
and fun and
vodka? Is
humor.
it coffee? Is it beer? What do they share?
It's
What
like
kind of drink?
it's like a mixed drink from Romulan culture, I think. I don't really remember. I was hoping you wouldn't call me on that. It's
well,
fine.
of course,
It's fine.
those Romulans love to get freaky.
Yeah, they do.
Oh yeah, we all know that. We all know that. Then what's funny is somehow the Spock one was the funniest of all of these, even though you have a cartoon playing part of this, and we have Star Trek's first musical episode, Subspace Rhapsody. And in that, one of the things I love in that, they really how at the peak emotions is when people start to singing, and the reason it happens is reality is unzipping, in a reality where everything's a musical is what's happening. So they have to play by musical rules to figure out how to reverse what happened. So they're so it's very meta, critiquing what musicals are at the same time, and also at one point, the communications officer is discussing like how humans have used music, and even mentions how that's why we use it in worship. It is such a deep way of communicating how you feel and that parts of you that you can't communicate otherwise. They also do a lot of this exploring because it's a musical, that's when all the relationship stuff that we've been waiting on kind of starts to happen in this. And you get the really fun thing of they kind of show at the beginning, you are not defined by your relationships is a point that's made. But then near the end, part of the end point, your relationships are defined by you. So you have to know who you are, because that is how the team's going to come together. So I'm interested if that's going to be kind of this finale coming up. Episode 10's next. It's the end of the season. I wonder if they're going to be pulling all this identity stuff that they've been doing all season together, because who you are as a person defines who your relationships are. So who our individuals on the crew are is going to define the Enterprise. I'm hoping that's kind of what the last episode be. We'll see. Just plugging my expectations in so that when I'm disappointed, you all know why I'm disappointed.
Can I just share when I hear Joshua geek out on something and then he starts giggling to himself and sharing jokes and laughing at his own jokes or stuff that jokes he remembered, I love that so much. So that's one of my favorite parts of Systematic Geekology is Joshua getting tickled by his own things that he geeks out on. So I love it. Classic Joshua, and thank you. Because when I think of sci-fi, I think of musicals. That's what I think of.
Yeah, of course. Reality unzipping and everything becoming a musical. It makes so much. Yeah. It's so funny because Spock has a beautiful voice in this, and he's singing about it's so illogical, it's so inconceivable, and I'm like, these are just words that I don't expect to hear in any musical ever. It's just so amusing. But no, I really like how they're really building on this identity. What does it mean to be human when we're talking about Spock? Are charades an important part of humanity? What does it mean to build relationships? Why is music an important part of us? Will, before we move on to the next thing, as far as like your experience, do you think that's an appropriate articulation of why churches do worship music? Like music and worship is like just a better way to express ourselves?
Yeah, I think there's something about us in terms of humans. I think there's questions that sci-fi does so well. What does it mean to be human? What is our relationship to the universe and the other? Who am I affects my relationships, but then, who I am or become is not separated from my relationship. So I understand discovering yourself first before you can be in a relationship with someone else, but I'm not detached from any relationship from anyone or anything. I'm an entanglement of relationships. So I'm inseparable from my relationships of my origin and where I am now. So, but in terms of music, it kind of goes into this theological idea of like theopoetics, in a sense that like there's an artistic expression that is entangled with our spirituality and our faith as well. That it's not just words, it's not just a head thing, it's a heart thing. And so how do I express myself? Well, we do that in art. We do that with poetry. We do that with music. We do that with words and story and narrative. So all those come together in the kind of theopoetics, which is just a great phrase that I've kind of leaned into over the last few years. And yeah, like you see any kind of like Disney movie is kind of like my words can't express, so I'm just going to bust out in song right now. I have to like sing about it. There's nothing that can contain the song with is in my heart. And I think in terms of our relationship with God, the other, what captivates our imagination or our heart, what we give ourselves over to. Music is a big part of expression of how to articulate what that means to us or what we're feeling about it. So yeah, I think it's fully appropriate, and it's always been a part of what makes humans humans, from the earliest campfire to what we're doing now in our religious communities.
Yeah, and I got to tag on their sea shanties. Listen, the psychology of why we do sea shanties, it builds relationships, singing together, confirming these words together in such a like in rhythm.
Communal
it's proven that it builds relationships. So I thought it was really interesting that the episode about relationships is the musical episode.
Whether it's karaoke or singing hymns together as a group, there's something about that communal living that's very bonding and moving to us. But yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, well, I just want to add on here something that maybe our mutual friend Nick Polk would say, that like even in the works of Tolkien describes creation as a song,
Right.
And I think that is one of those things where music is powerful, but also like music is incredibly for something that doesn't have a visual component to it. It has so many visual not consequences, but the outpouring of music is often visual. When you see Will has been to multiple concerts this year. I'm sure at those concerts, you see people physically embodying something that does not have a physical body. And I love the power of music in that we see it come out physically, though it itself is not a physical entity. That is one of like the true I think magics of music. I'm not a musician, by trade or even by accident, but I've singing in the car with my kids, like that has a physical response to it. That's the word I was looking for. But I also just wanted to slip in and remind Nick that like other people know stuff about Tolkien too, and
flex. Look at that flex. Look at that geek flex.
But see, here's where I can't wait for the four of us to hang out at Theology Beer Camp, because Nick can he can correct me, but then I can also flex against him on stuff. Like the four of us are gonna have a ton of fun playing off of each other that weekend.
Let me also
I'm glad Will mentioned karaoke, because we're going to be doing our first ever geek karaoke.
I'll tie in some science too. Like if the fabric of the universe is built upon like vibrating strings, and the fact that like maybe behind the universe itself, the very fabric of the universe, are these like musical tones. I mean, Tolkien wasn't far off. Like, you have the strings on the piano or a guitar or a violin or a cello. And if that's kind of what's going on at the very subatomic level, and our bodies are like vibrating waves that we're attached to, then our voices, vocal cords, and the music we play and the instruments we play is caught up in kind of the song and music of the universe. And so if there's a creator and author behind that, which I believe there is, then I want to get in rhythm with that. I want to sing along with that, and not sing out of tune, but be a part of it. And I don't play any instruments or know music anyway, but I know a good tune when I hear it. I know what I like to dance to and what really gets me going. And so music's a big part of that. And it's pretty cool that Star Trek is leaning into the kind of that musical aspect of theopoetics and musical expression too, because I think is part of the fabric of reality, if you ask me.
Yeah, and if you message Systematic Geekology, I'll give you a whole playlist of great sea shanties. So just keep that in mind.
That's the name of this episode, sea shanties. Gather around.
Let's
people.
Go, Joshua.
Yeah, here we are.
All right. Will, you pick this one. I'm gonna let you lead the way. Why are we talking about my adventures with Superman?
Yeah, let's so there's the Adventures of Superman. There is the Superman animated series. Superman has been around a long time. He's the OG. He's the original superhero. Really, there were superheroes before him. There were Greek gods before, mythological stories before Superman, but when you get to him, he's been around a long time with long history. And so when I heard that My Adventures with Superman was going to drop on Adult Swim and then on HBO Max and then Max, I was like, what are we doing? Another Superman cartoon? All right, I'll check it out. Oh man, this is a charming cartoon. It is a feel-good cartoon. When you look at it and say, oh, it's Adult Swim, it's going to hop on Max, it's just like a Harley Quinn rated R, kids aren't supposed to watch this. No, it is a very mild PG cartoon about Superman and how he's getting started off. Like, he's an intern. He's not even a reporter yet. He's coming right out of home. And it's kind of it's an origin story without being like a heavy handed, here we are, another origin story retelling of Superman. They do things differently. It's for the modern era, modern world. Other hosts on our podcast have talked about how much they love this. So I won't go too depth, but yeah, it's My Adventures with Superman is the trio of Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, and Clark Kent. There they are right there. And they're learning what it means to be friends, learning what it means to be interns and reporters. And all the while, Clark Kent's learning how to be Superman. So that whole, I'm a sucker for origin stories and like learning curves, the learning curve. What does it mean to be a hero? What does it mean to use my powers? And then the whole learning curve of how to be a human in the world, or how to be in relationships, or how to live on my own, or how to get my first job, or first relationship that I'm romantically involved in. All those learning curves that comes around is wrapped up in the show, and I just love it so much. And I think we can learn a lot from that too. We're all in the learning process, and so as you watch this charming show about Clark learning how to be Superman, and then his friends learning how to be friends, is so good. And the retelling of some of the villains, a little bit twist to it. I mean, but it's still at its heart, still what Superman is all about. Like, the good-natured Boy Scout is there. And if they want to learn how to do a Superman movie, just do this. This is the movie. Do this. It's not that hard. Not that hard. Do it. I know, like, animation and live action, there's a cost difference of how you do this, but man, the dialogue and the relationship and how this is written, it couldn't be more great, in my opinion. So, yeah, do this, James Gunn. Do this, please.
Yeah. So I love Lois's relationship with him. That's all I have to say. You know, I know a lot of the characterizations and stuff have changed, but their relationship is just that's the whole reason I watch it.
Yeah, so
I'm like, I love this.
And it's not without conflict or tension. Like, they don't sugarcoat anything. They're trying to learn how to live in this world, and they all have like ambitions and expectations and learning how to communicate with each other, which is like our everyday life with every relationship we're a part of or job we're a part of is right there. So, yeah, Ryan, chime in. You've watched it all.
So,
what do you think?
I think Superman is one of those properties, even outside of comics, where you would look at him as a character and be like, oh, I'll bet most of his stories are pretty easy. I think Superman stories might be easy to comprehend, like on a good level, but I think Superman stories are really hard to do well. Like, because the character has been, I mean, literally, he's the first super heroic character in modern entertainment. Like, he's the paragon. He is the original. Action Comics #1 set off all of this. So I think to do this character in a refreshing, exciting, nuanced way is rare. And you really don't, like, I didn't see it coming because I was a little game. We're only 6 episodes into this series, but I was a little late to the game with this one because I was like, another Superman thing. You know, what is the thing about this? And I think the thing that keeps drawing me back to this property is the charm that it has. The wonderment that Clark looks at the world, the wonderment that Clark looks at Lois with. Joshua hit on this, and I think it is so key and critical. Their relationship is the pathos and the heart of this property. We do see them fight a lot of revitalized villains, and that's fantastic. I love their take on Deathstroke. Their take on Deathstroke was very cool, and I was very, very like, Deathstroke versus Superman kind of feels like, well, Superman should win that fight all the time. But in this version, obviously Clark is a brand new superhero, and Slade is this, like, you know, this experienced mercenary. So he has the experience on him. But like, I love that I love the earnestness that Clark has, and he is infatuated with Lois. He's infatuated with her, and Lois's characterization in this series is so good. I loved that she's gonna get that story no matter what, and she suspects everything. She's very earnest. I keep saying earnest because these characters have a heart to them. They have a desire, a passion to them. I feel it coming through, and then I remember it's a cartoon.
Yeah.
I remember that the characters are being drawn and it's not live action. And I love this show.
Yeah.
Absolutely love this show. And I think there's but 4 more episodes left in this season. I'm so excited to see how this season wraps up. Whenever it drops, I am watching it as soon as I possibly can. I will toss just about every other trailer, property, MCU thing to the side. If just give me more Adventures with Superman. That's what I want right now. That's what I need right now.
And I'll say sorry, real fast, like the animation too. Like I love the animation. It's kind of in the style of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's not like super computer generated. It's 2D, but it's got a little bit of anime feel, but it's also part of like OG cartoon, 2D cartoon, whether it's the animated Batman series or animated Superman series. It's got that feel to it, and I love it. Yeah. The animated style is drawing me into. Josh, go ahead. We've been gushing over it. What do you think?
No, I was just gonna, you're talking about the relationships, and like what Ryan said reminded me of like, I never liked Superman really until like the last couple of years. And then, you have the Adventures of John Kent, and I was like, this guy's pretty cool. And then recently that miniseries, Superman Lost, I'm liking Clark Kent all of a sudden.
So good.
This is the first time I've liked Lois or Jimmy. And I'm like, they're not just like placeholders. Like I genuinely like these characters. Superman could not be there for an episode and I wouldn't feel like I missed anything.
It's so true, Josh.
For some reason.
Jeez. Yeah. I'm buying your first beer at Theology Beer Camp. That was so good. It's true. It's totally true. You could have an episode of this show without Superman or Clark, and I would not feel jilted at all.
Yeah. No. And that's incredible. And then for me, just as someone who's like, I went into it kind of looking at, this does look like Avatar: Last Airbender. There's so many anime themes that I was like, wait a minute. Good. Superman always could have been an anime. Of course, like the robotic stuff. I was like, yeah, this is very anime typical. The emotions, the way like the relationships are playing out. I'm like, all of these are just such like standard anime tropes, but also I've always known this was in Superman. I just would have never put the two together.
Elizabeth, one of our hosts, loves the romance and the anime. I would love to hear her take on this. So Elizabeth, you're listening, please watch the show and let us know what you think. I also think, going back to like your discussion with Star Trek, like wondering what it means to be human, a question that Clark Kent openly says out loud in the show. He almost looks at the camera and says like, who am I? And he's trying to figure out who he is, where he's from. Jor-El, when he sees his dad from Krypton, he's talking in like Kryptonian language. He doesn't even understand what he's saying. Of course he doesn't, because he's from Earth and he knows English. Like, why would he know or why would Jor-El speak English? But that whole question, who am I? And then I think Lois says at one point, who are you? And so they're asking this question of like, who am I? Who are you? Who are we? And they're all entangled with this trio, this Trinity friend group, is trying to feel out who they are and what they're about and who they are in this world and where they stand. And they're not doing it without one another. They're in community with each other. So again, that theme of doing this life thing together in relationship with one another is a pretty important one.
Yeah. Speaking of identity, our next pick has a lot to do with who are you and can we trust who you say you are? So I'm excited to get into this. Ryan, for those listening, could you what is Marvel's Secret Invasion? What's it all about?
Oh, Joshua, it's so many things. This 6-episode series is really digging into Nick Fury's relationship with the Skrulls. We find out that they are a displaced group. They are refugees on Earth, and Fury, we find out what Fury has gotten the Skrulls to do on his behalf throughout the history of our MCU. And a lot of it comes back to bite him in the person of Gravik, who is our antagonist for this 6-episode series, played by the amazing Kingsley Ben-Adir, who I could not have a higher opinion of him as an actor now. I'm so ready for him to be Marley this year, to be Bob Marley later on this year. Very excited for that. But anyway, so Fury and his team of super spy rogues are trying to shut down a plot by Gravik to essentially bring about world destruction so that the Skrulls can have a permanent place to stay. There's lots of side quests along the way. We meet a lot of different characters, but if you were going to probably take a 30,000 foot view of this series, that gives you kind of the main plot points. I will say about this, my take on this show and my response to this show is not original, but it is very much consistent with what a lot of my friends have been saying. Like, the first 5 episodes of this series, fantastic. Loved it. I loved the genre themes of spy and thriller. That last episode, I can't think of another way to say it. It landed like a fart in church. I was like, okay, like, you had me. Like, you absolutely had me. And I think there were some things that really like played out through the length of the show, where like the acting was always good. The vibe of the show, the atmospherics of the show, the aesthetics were good the whole way through. But man, some of the things in that last episode, I think just left a lot of people wanting a different conclusion. But I think I liked this series. That for those first 5 episodes, I'll probably rewatch a lot. But I enjoyed the first 5 episodes. I'll say that.
I rewatched the last episode last night, just kind of get ready for this. But it's funny when I listen to, I think most of our circles tend to be pretty positive. We don't want to be that toxic fan or geek out there who's like, breaking news, let me clickbait and tell about how my hot takes about how whatever this thing sucks, but listening to Ryan and his circles and his podcasts and some of the people that he's in other group chats that I'm not a part of talk about this and critique it in a polite way has been very fun to me. They're trying to be critical and be but they're the nicest way possible. We kind of maybe didn't like this. We wished it'd been better, but we understand they worked really hard. We love you guys, but not my cup of tea. I mean, it was like it was nicest critique I've ever heard.
That's me. That's totally me.
It's you. It's the source pages, like all our friends out there who are big geeks that try to keep it positive. Man, we're trying super hard to not be overly critical, but it's hard because we wanted so much out of this show, and then it built. I think for me, it's like, where is this leading to? I think what was so charming about the MCU from the very beginning, those origin movies, we knew it was leading to an Avengers team, an Avengers movie. And then those Avenger movies were leading to the big showdown with Thanos. And then after that, what's going to happen? I think what's been in this phase since Endgame is like, what is this leading to? Where are the connected tissues? They tease it a little bit, or they build up, this is heading somewhere, the next big team. But where's the next big team? Where are the Young Avengers? Where are the Thunderbolts? Where's the Excalibur? Where if they just said like a couple more words or just kind of laid it out there a little bit more clearly where this would go in, I think we'd be on board. But like, yeah, the 30-foot view, we see these little tiny stories going on, but like, where are the connective tissues for the larger MCU? And for me, that's kind of my frustration with the show. Where is this leading? Just give me an end credit scene or a couple extra sentences to tell me where you're going. And I mean, yeah, maybe we all cleared up in the Marvels movie. Like, okay, but like maybe that last scene in episode 6, they could have led it on, or a closing credit scene. Maybe they couldn't get him in the room because of COVID or writer strike. I don't know, but like, where's it going? So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, we're going to get to some of the implications here in a minute. I did want to talk about some of the comparisons with that in the comic book first. First, I'll just give my like general overview. I'm not afraid to be critical. I just didn't like it, all the way through. It started off and I was hopeful for like the first 3 episodes. I was like, it's going to get to something good. They're just building up. It's going to get to something. Then eventually I was like, or maybe it's just boring. Like, I know they put a lot of work. There was a lot of good stuff. There were parts I liked. In fact, I think the thing I liked the most was probably in the last episode. Ironically, you know, I'm Josh with the Bad Opinions. Yeah,
that was your favorite episode.
I have it on here. Here we go. Josh with the Bad Opinions. It's my title. It's fine. I've accepted it. But yeah, I don't know, man. I like the one twist where it was like, oh, Nick Fury wasn't really there. I was like, okay, there was a twist. I went into this not expecting it to be the comic book, but expecting it to kind of be like spy thriller, a lot like what it was like Winter Soldier movie was. But for me, it was all just predictable and kind of slow, like a very slow pace. I was like, this would have been a better movie, I think. Which I don't say that a lot. You know, I'm glad that Miss Marvel and Moon Knight were shows. I think we needed to build it out. I was like, yeah. For me, personally, I know a lot of people loved it. It was just kind of my thing where I was like, I wasn't expecting it to be the comic, because they would have had to pull Robert Downey Jr. and all kinds of stuff, and they weren't going to do that. And I knew that.
That was never going to happen.
But yeah, the closest I got wasn't even Nick Fury. For me, this show made Nick Fury seem like he wasn't very good. All of his good spy stuff was just Skrulls. And the real good super agent was, what was the female character that he partnered up with at the end? She was the one that I was like, this is the Nick Fury I know. I don't know who.
Oh, you're talking about
Samuel
Olivia
Jackson's
Colman's
playing. Yeah,
Sonya?
I was like, yeah. I was like, that's the real Nick Fury in this. I was like, she's acting like the character I expected.
Yeah.
And I loved her. I loved her character a lot. So that one was a positive for me too.
And that was the thing of like, if she's building a team, kind of like, gonna lead to like Black Knight, Excalibur, Captain Britain.
Yeah.
You know, she's got Guy on her team now, which is kind of like the Hulkling version of the Young Avengers, kind of like the Skrull who can turn into things and shapeshift into a super Skrull. Then cool. I'm excited about that. But give me a couple extra scenes or a couple extra dialogues to let me know you're going that direction, to get me excited. You don't have to like it can stand alone on its own, but still build towards something. And so, yeah, there are some moments that were great. There are some character moments that were great. I like this Samuel Jackson just acting and doing his thing. Cool. Let's do it. I'm on board. But there are some elements that were like, where did this end up at the final end? Kind of where we were already at the beginning, other than a pissed off president who's going to like blow up things. And I'm like, man, like, are we doing that? So
we've never seen that before, Will.
Yeah,
we had to see it in the movies.
Well, they had to set up for Harrison Ford to become president.
No.
So that's really all that was. No,
Red
General
Hulk
Ross is becoming.
president.
Well, he's supposed to be. That was supposed.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah,
yeah. So I was like, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. So I do want to talk some about the implication. Not before we get to the implication, I want to talk some about like the comic book comparison stuff.
Sure.
The moment that upset me the most, not upset, that I was most disappointed in. They set me up for a great comic book moment. So we all know there's spoilers. Maria Hill dies in this. In the comic, she also gets shot. And I was waiting because I was expecting a really cool double agent Nick Fury who had all this planned out and knew what was going on, instead of a Nick Fury who was kind of clueless. But she gets shot in the comics and they're like, oh, we got her. The Skrulls, backstabbed her, Order 66 kind of number. And then up with, you know what I'm going to say? My last words, it's going to be Nick Fury was right. I'm going to get a t-shirt, and a t-shirt's going to have big words on it that just says Nick Fury was right. And they shoot her down, and then turns out she was just a life model decoy. The real Maria Hill's up above and snipes them all. And that's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for it to drop because we saw Maria Hill in the Marvel's trailers. I was like, oh, okay, so she's fine. I was waiting for they think she got her, and then it turns out this whole time Nick Fury life model decoys, and we weren't even watching the real Nick Fury. And I don't know. I think in my head, I built it up way more than I needed to. But I loved that moment in the comics, and I was sad we didn't get something similar. It didn't have to be the same.
Yeah, and in the comics, like going back for those who weren't familiar, this is a Brian Michael Bendis kind of big event in 2008 with Linnell Yu as the artist, fantastic artist. And so, is coming off of like Bendis created the new Avengers team where you had like Wolverine and Spider-Man and a few other like staple Marvel heroes on the Avengers. So you had this new Avengers team, but then you lead into like the Skrulls where you are like, who's a Skrull, who's not a Skrull, who do we trust, who we do not trust? Oh, and then look over the corner, or maybe Peter Parker is a Skrull, or maybe maybe where's the scroll, like where that created kind of the skepticism and the distrust in this big crossover event with Marvel. And so they're kind of leaning into that a little bit. That's about the only thing that they leaned into with the TV show that they couldn't really do because of the comics. They didn't have all the characters there, but like Rhodey being a scroll, or who do we know is a scroll or not, who do you trust or not trust, was kind of the themes. And again, who am I relationship with? Is it authentic or not, kind of thing.
I did find one other similarity with the comic, though, and they just made it a lot less religious in the show. But the Skrull do kind of have this cult mentality of them following this one leader. In the comic, that happens, but it's more religious. You know, they keep saying, he even loves you. He loves you. And you're like wondering who he is. And it reveals that it's God. They believe they're killing people and doing all this stuff, and that you're going to become one with God whenever they kill you, something like that. I don't know if that's exactly it, but that's pretty. I'm like 80% sure, something like that. So it was interesting.
You're close enough.
Yeah. I'm just roll with it, guys. So there was definitely a cult mentality. So I thought it was cool that they still did something like that in the show. What do you like? Do you guys think it was robbed, any of them not mentioning like it being a religious thing? I mean, to me, I was like, it's Disney. They're not going to make it religious. I didn't think it really missed anything with that.
Yeah, I think in 2008, Bendis is playing around with, again, we're kind of like in today's age of thinking about the immigrant, the other, welcome the refugee is kind of big language, closing the borders, who you can let in or out is a big part of the political discourse that we're a part of in our own country. But in 2008, this post 9/11, we're still wrestling with kind of a war in the Middle East and what's going on there, terrorism, religious extremism, that kind of thing. So Bendis is playing around with that. I don't think you needed that in this kind of show, but I think the political overtones of like the other borders, where's your safe haven or sanctuary, that kind of dialogue and conversation, I think was helpful and what was needed, rather than being, I mean, even think life model decoys, if they implemented that in the midst of Skrulls, then you're really kind of muddy in the waters of like, who's who? Is it a robot or is it a Skrull? Or I don't mind that being left out. Maybe at some point they'll introduce that, but I think it was enough there to kind of talk about, identity, the other, the refugee, a safe space to call home or belong, being displaced as a people or an alien. Again, how do we encounter? We just had a Congress had a hearing about aliens and whether we're going to welcome the alien or not. And again, hosts on our own show will say like, well, we should welcome the alien in our own neighborhood, the other neighbor, before we even think about outer space. But it plays with those themes. And I think those themes were done well. For me, that on its own is not enough to connect me to the big MCU connective tissues of a larger universe is what I wanted to say.
Now, I do think they translate it well, though, because instead of making it like religious and about, what was going on at those time when we're worried about Islamic groups in the Middle East, now we're worried about Russia. So this show really kind of still included something relevant to our own time when we're thinking about the alien and the other. And I like these questions of, do we treat the alien any differently, whether they look like us or not? And do we is there ever a time where the alien actually is dangerous? Like sometimes, right now, I don't know if I want Russian planes flying over the US, So I don't know. As far as like how they wrestled with especially the question of like whether the alien should look like us or not, I'm thinking a lot of like Christian missionary groups. We go over and we basically teach them how to have white American culture and Christianity in that. Do you think there was anything like that especially spoke to you in the show, as far as like, how do we treat the other? Do we make them feel like they need to look like us?
Yeah, I mean, that's colonialism, right? Like we're like, are we to share something that's meaningful to me to bring life and it for someone else, or like good news or gospel, or are we just trying to like change their culture? Like to be a Lutheran doesn't mean you have to like Jello casserole, it's like, that's a big part of like Lutheran culture.
Yes,
beer, coffee, and Jello casseroles, is not what it means to be a Lutheran. That's the cultural aspect of it. And so, I think colonialism versus sharing what's meaningful to you, or accompaniment, empowerment, those words. I think the show leaned into that some. It's not going to do it perfectly in the 6th episode. Try to do a bunch of stuff, but I think for that part, that they had me interested in that. That isn't what irritated me about the show.
Yeah, no, me neither. I really appreciated it. I mean, even because it's not just race in this, it's making people look like you. I mean, even thinking of like going to the workplace. The people who work in my office, we can wear t-shirts and whatever. And, if you look in the other office, they might be allowed to, but you're kind of expected to look like the other people who have the polo shirts and, the Ralph Lauren shoes, whatever else. I don't know, man. So, it is interesting, certain cultures, they will look at you different. Even in the US, we have like subcultures. They will look at you different and judge you based on what you're dressed like, how you come out. If I come out to Will's surfing group and they're all surfing and I'm wearing a polo, they might judge me a little bit for coming out on the beach with a polo. I don't know.
You would really harsh their mellow, Joshua.
Yeah,
really harsh the mellow.
3-piece suit on the beach. They're like, what's this guy doing?
Right. Kook. We'll call you a kook. Keep it out.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Ryan, in terms of like, your love of the MCU, Thor, the larger picture. We were all looking forward to this because we wanted to see more Samuel Jackson.
Yes.
We wanted to see. I've heard you say before, like the very ending of him just getting back on the spaceship, and all right, like that's kind of weird. But like, where do you hope this leads to with like the Marvels and Miss Marvel and him showing up there, and perhaps another kind of scroll war, or I don't know. Are they going to lean into that more, or just ignore what they did because it didn't get very good ratings and we're just going to move on? Or I don't know.
Well, I'll be honest. I'll be perfectly honest. I have gotten out of that phase of my life. I've matured. I've gotten more. I think I've gotten more wise as an older man now, where like I don't need to know everything that's going to happen before I watch something. But so I don't seek that out. Will, I'll be perfectly honest. But I have seen the Marvels trailer. A trailer you guys may have mentioned on a previous episode, but that Marvels trailer is amazing. When Iman Vellani like looks at the Flurkin and is like, oh my God. I was like, Joshua talked about laughing his butt off at the Spock bacon comment. I've watched that Marvels trailer too many times, and that Flurkin thing gets me every time. But
she's great.
I think so much of that movie is going to be those three characters bonding together, because they say in that trailer, like, are we a team? No, we're not a team. We're not a team.
We're a team.
They're kind of they're a team, at least. They're a team by circumstance, at least. I think the movie is gonna maybe lean. It's gonna lean way more into that than being a falling out of Secret Invasion. I think okay, I don't know. I'm not a predictions guy, but honestly, in probably a year or two, this series is going to be forgotten for but it depends on if there's something actually consequential that gets picked up. I know on our show when we did our review, a friend of mine, Matt Carroll, said, well, what if this leads to the Thunderbolts and the Skrulls are why the Thunderbolts need to exist? I'm like, okay, that interests me. That interests me. But that's speculation. So it's that ever-present thing of like, we'll have to see. I do think the Marvels is going to outperform expectations. Whatever those expectations are, I think that movie is just going to really rip, and it's going to be really good.
Agreed.
I'm ready to see where this leads. I think the MCU has this inherent trust, this hopeless devotion now, where it's like, oh, that I didn't feel like that was that good. Well, maybe the next one will be better. Like there's that continual, we look forward, even if we're a little disappointed, we're like, well, the Marvels is going to be better, right? Well, Fantastic Four is getting here, eventually. The X-Men are going to get here eventually. So there's that looking forward, even if we don't know what we're looking forward at or to. There's at least that hope that the next thing might be just a little bit better. And plus, we all know Loki season 2 is going to kick all sorts of butt. So, that's my forecasting. Will.
So I think I see it feeding into New World Order, Captain America, but I see Captain America in everything, so you can't trust me on that. But I see it. I think it'll happen. I'm excited for that. Also, I just want to throw out there, as far as like we constantly look, we're disappointed. We are much like the Israelites of, oh, God has forsaken us, even though we just done a miracle for us. I got to point out, we keep saying all these phases suck. These phases suck. We said it like, one movie after No Way Home, one of the absolute best movies in this timeline. And now we're saying it right after Guardians 3, possibly the best movie in the MCU. God, man, I gotta say,
it's a tough one to beat. It's a tough one to beat.
Yeah, honestly, Thor Ragnarok, that, and Winter Soldier, like all three of them, I'm like, I just can't. I don't want to pick. It's like picking a favorite child. I love those so much.
That's a good trio.
Joshua, you should get some children, and Will, who's your favorite daughter now? Nope, nothing.
Yeah.
The safe answer is nothing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but I'm excited to see where it goes. Real quick, and then we're gonna go to the wrap up. 0 to 10. How are you rating this, Will?
Secret.
Yeah.
What's the passing grade?
If you're talking to me, 0 is the worst, 10 is the best, 5 would be comparable to everything else. So 5 would be average.
I'll give it a 5.
Okay, that's fair. I'm gonna give it a 4. I think it's just not quite as good as like normal stuff that I'd be watching. And if I'm grading it just on a scale of other MCU stuff, it's like a 2. It's barely better than Third Iron Man. So, Ryan,
nothing is worse than that third Iron Man.
True. I was so worried when they introduced Extremis into this. I was like, guys, that did not work.
Oh my gosh. I would say probably a 4 or 5. I think you guys are pretty on the nose there. I would rate the first 5 episodes like a 7. A 7 trending towards 8, but I mean that ending left me empty and wanting to binge eat calories I don't need, and I don't know.
I will say Emilia Clarke in the MCU as Gaia, as a Super Skrull. I like that idea a lot. We'll see what happens with. I know the way they did with the special effects and her powers are kind of wonky, and people are like, "What's going on?" But like her, if they could really grab her, I just love her, and her being part of the MCU makes me excited. So that's
yeah.
Good.
Right.
Whereas my adventures with Superman is a 10+, man. Right now,
listen. Oh, that's coming up next when we get to our wrap up.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you, of everything we talked about today, let's start with Ryan. If you had to pick one thing that we talked about today to recommend, if people haven't seen any of these things and somehow listened to all of us ramble about it, what are you picking, Ryan?
A vampire on a water boat going through the ocean
on a water boat, as opposed to what other kind of boat?
Airboat. There's airboat.
Yes. I mean, my last plug for Last Voyage of the Demeter, go see it. But anyway, I would say my adventures with Superman is. I don't often say it's required reading or required viewing to go check out a thing. Come on, like go watch My Adventures with Superman. Like, you can receive a lot of positivity in that, but also really great characters, really great animation. Like, it's not. I would say it's an all ages show. Kids can watch it like that. You should watch it with kids. But also, like, if you watch it as an adult, you will definitely still be very engaged, and it's just a well done show. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna let you go last. Save the best for last. Well, for first and last. I'm just putting the worst in the middle. So I'm gonna go ahead and go. Of everything, I'm gonna reach deep into our lightning round that we did, and in our lightning round, I mentioned Good Omens season 2. So I just gotta, guys, as far as like anybody can watch it, you don't need a whole lot of like background to watch Good Omens. The first and second season both are like 6 episodes, wrestling with what is good, what is evil, is God actually good, is there such thing as a duality? You have the romance beat, the quirkiness, like it has all of the flag, like the music, everything about this series, top grade. Like that would be a 10 out of 10 for me if we were rating it. Guys, just go watch Good Omens. That's it. Just go watch Good Omens. All right, Will.
Those sound like timeless questions, and that's why we do this thing. We just, I my adventures with Superman. You know, it's not by himself; he's with others in relationship. And watching that show reminds me of why I like superheroes and why I like that genre, why I love comics. You know, it just got it. Man, just goes back to the core of why I love this genre so much. So yeah, that's what I recommend.
Oh man, guys, thank you for everybody who stuck with us through all of this. Make sure you like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, go over there, follow the channel. It's worth it. You know, rate us on Podchaser, whatever else. Check out the main feed wherever you get your podcasts. And guys, I am going to need you to do one very important thing today. And remember that we're all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests. This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries podcast network.